Hello again, dear friends and colleagues, and here we are at our final discussion in this conference, Crisis, Crossroads and Courage, and perhaps the one for which we need the most courage, because we're going to be talking about the meeting point of future technologies and lifestyle changes. And there's been a kind of pendulum that swings back and forth, hasn't there, in which we sometimes think that technology will solve it all for us and be that wonderful, magical future, and then the sense of pessimism, and where we hear even from the Leverhulme power systems professor that no, it's down to us to change as citizens, as individuals, and get real. Where does the balance in that pendulum lie? That's what we're going to be discussing in this conversation. And to give us her framing thoughts and talk us through where she would place the human factor, please welcome Alexandra Bech Gjørv, CEO of SINTEF.
Well, thank you. For those of you who don't know SINTEF, we are the largest research institute here in Norway, working as a polytechnic across most sectors of society. And of course, with the Norwegian industry structure, energy is very, very important to us. I would say that my profile, my background would fit better in the earlier parts of the program. You know, industry, transformation, infrastructure, and storage. But I decided to try to focus on where people live in the built society. And I don't think I can answer your entire challenge that I will frame the question of lifestyle changes, but I will talk about what we do in that context and try to add some personal perspectives. Obviously, we are in the middle of a huge climate and nature crisis, and where the what used to be an energy trilemma with affordability and climate and security of supply suddenly has nature and cultural heritage issues as well. So it has turned into a five-fold challenge that we need to deal with. And a big part of the solution lies in the world's cities. That's where most people live, that's where most people tend to live. If you look at the footprint here, you can see basically where energy is spent other than in the industry. And that's why the European Commission has made its massive effort to, I was very curious when they launched the idea of missions to change, that they actually selected cities. But I think it was a good move because the cities are so transformational. They are the trendsetters of the universe, and they have so many people. They can experiment, they can often regulate. They are, if you look at the difference between the cities and the countryside here, they have more flexibility in how they use energy. And often also cities can act faster than nations on regulations. And we see that quite a lot, for example, in Oslo, which is now one of the 3 of the 100 zero-emission smart cities, and number 3 on the global index. They have taken the big political hit by saying that we should cut emissions in all sectors, and one of the biggest sectors, 11% of the city's emissions, is the construction sector. And by being at the forefront of both of buses and machinery for construction, saying that they should be zero emission, they have created a big market. And that has produced a number of suppliers actually rushing to supply the city of Oslo with first zero emission buses and then zero emission excavation tools. But obviously that requires a lot of power, and it requires a lot of effect to charge these huge things. So we're also quite concerned about the energy efficiency of these sectors. So it was exciting to see that Volvo and the entrepreneur Skanska joined us on looking at how to use AI to optimize the way we do infrastructure work. And we found it to be quite interesting how these machine operators and the researchers on artificial intelligence collaborate in order to use practical experience and optimization technology to understand how you can reduce the energy consumption on the construction site. And that is a merger of high and fairly low skilled people, and I think that's putting them together and looking at practical challenges has been a very good approach. We haven't got the results yet, but I'm promised that they will be enormous. Of course, when we move to a zero-emission society, we need to cut emissions in every sector, including the transportation sector, which is the highest CO2 emitter in Norway. And that means going to zero-emission transportation. That means a lot of batteries. That means some hydrogen. And it means more demand for electricity. And it means that people are worried about their driving length and their opportunity to charge. So in the European Green Charge project, we have worked together with the cities of Oslo, Barcelona and Bremen on installing confidence in the public that using AI to understand who can charge when and making sure that you actually use the full capacity of the charging infrastructure, helping the population to plan their energy needs and helping them through AI has been very important, and also optimizing the incentives to enable people to have trust and have a financial incentive to change. Then my background is a lot with working with energy infrastructure, and I'm proud that we've been working with the national system operators, as well as now starting with the regional operators on how to use the grid smarter. The grid industry is the most conservative industry on earth. They really don't like to use technology because they want everything to be very smooth, because security of supply has been so important. And pushing first the central grid operators to see how you can change the fundamental principles of how you operate the grid. It used to be that any component you should be able to do without any component. It's called the N-1 principle. And challenging that and seeing that new digital technologies gives more resilience. It means that you can put much more through the grid system. By putting sensors on the grid, you can understand that whether it's a cold day or a hot day, you can actually optimize what you're doing, and you can at least use the grid you have to a much, much higher degree. And I think that has a lot to do with attitudes, that people need to challenge their own behaviors. Then, of course, we need to use as little if you can get energy without electricity, that's hugely important. Two-thirds of the Norwegian gas goes to heating. District heating enables carbon capture and storage, enables biocarbon capture and storage, very important climate initiatives. Heat pumps, and also working on offloading the grid through local low-temperature grids. Summer energy storage for winter, centralizing data centers so they use much less electricity, making industry or business buildings smaller, and then of course working on creating the complete zero-emission neighborhoods. This is something we've been working on since 2009 on the building, insulation, natural ventilation, solar energy. And then more and more on neighborhoods and how to optimize the complete energy infrastructure, and then working with people on the full life perspective. What makes it attractive to live in smaller, better isolated places where you share, where you don't travel as much, where you have good public transportation infrastructure? And to finish off, my personal experience is that it's a lack of imagination, lack of skills, and lack of sharing of perspectives. I started to work with solar energy in 2005, and people told me that was the Gucci renewable, only good to make yourself look good. And today it's the world's biggest, fastest growing source of energy. The other is that there's a hyper-complex society where everybody sees things from their own perspective, and they often don't share. Until 5 years ago, the oil and gas people invited the oil and gas experts, and the electricity people invited the electricity people and the hydrogen people and the grid people, and bringing experts and citizens together, bringing experts from different fields together and actually practically share information or practically share perspectives is the only way forward. Thank you.